And a very happy Monday to you on a day when the President and Mitt Romney are on opposite coasts, raising funds for the brutal battle ahead. And the President is making a political push, urging Congress to pass the Paycheck Fairness Act, targeting the wage gap between men and women. But speaking of paychecks and fairness, what of Mitt Romney and a discreet Friday night drop of his personal financial disclosures, showing his personal fortune remains near $250 million. A little $500,000 in gold over here, a few million in those 36 plus Bain funds over there. Who's counting, really? Yeah, he's managed to do pretty well for himself, despite a mass sell-off of stocks before he started running for president, including Walmart's Mexican operation, now roiled by payoff allegations, and British Sky Broadcasting, owned by embattled media mogul Rupert Murdoch. Crikey, somebody obviously knows what they're doing here, but it's got nothing to do with Romney, of course, because his mad money is governed in a blind trust. And blind is perhaps the operative word for how he'd like voters to approach his wealth, dropping the freighted documents just before the close of business on Friday afternoon. You might recall he dropped his tax extension application at the same time back in April. Harvard Business School wasn't lost on Mitt, no sir. And while Mr. Romney says he's very proud of his record as a businessman, you don't hear as much about his record as governor. And a new Obama ad helps us to understand why.
Instead of hiring workers from his own state, Romney outsourced call center jobs to India. He cut taxes for millionaires like himself while raising them on the middle class, and left the state $2.6 billion deeper in debt. So now, when Mitt Romney talks about what he'd do as president,
I know what it takes to create jobs.
Remember, we've heard it all before.
Now, that's got the folks at Karl Rove's super PAC American Crossroads steaming mad, or is it trembling in fear in their new ad?
Pay their fair share.
Pay their fair share.
They want even deeper cuts.
Whatever happened to hope and change? Now it seems he's just coming right out of the box with these old-fashioned negative ads.
If you don't have a record to run on, then you paint your opponent as someone people should run from.
That's subtle, isn't it? By the way, you can purchase your very own Shepard Fairey-style fear poster at the American Crossroads website. I don't know, I am starting to sense a theme here. What do you think?
I really believe that there is a sense in the country that we are in danger.
What is your fear if Obama got 4 more years?
The one thing we all fear the most is a weak America.
Goodness gracious. But Mitt and his minions can't let this go, can they? After all, if President Obama wins another term, the presumptive nominee stands to pay an extra $5 million a year in taxes. No, can't let that happen. Let's bring in our panel now. In Philadelphia, Professor James Peterson is Director of Africana Studies at Lehigh University and a blogger for the Huffington Post. And here in New York is Bloomberg View columnist William Cohen, author of the book Money and Power. Bill, if I can start with you. There's now no doubting Mitt Romney's financial success.
He's good.
He's, we can't even calculate, somewhere between 83 and 255 million. But given that certain investments have been dropped as he runs for president, how blind a trust is this?
Look, Martin, when it comes to blind trusts, one really never knows. It's sort of like the same way super PACs are supposed to be differentiated from the candidate who the super PAC is supposed to serve. You can always have as trustees, friends of yours who you've known a long time, who you can sort of have a nonverbal communication, if you will, about, winks and nods.
You mean about telepathy?
Well, how shall we say nonverbal communication, where they know each other well, they know their investing styles, they know what he wants. I don't know who's in charge of Mitt Romney's blind trust, but this is an interesting coincidence that he was able to sell, B Sky B at that time and other stocks in Walmart, Mexico in a timely fashion.
Absolutely.
No doubt about
it. Just coincidence. OK. Now, he rails against the president repeatedly, but hasn't Romney done rather well since the election, given the fact that the stock market has gone from 7,949 when the president was inaugurated to to 12,600.
Well, and in March,
Mitt Romney's done well.
Absolutely, and in March of 2009, it was at 6,500. So he's basically had a double during the president's tenure, and yet he can find something to complain about. I mean, the guy is worth $250 million. Who knows how much of that has been, as a result of his investments in the stock market that have doubled during the president's tenure in office. But obviously, he's not one to complain. He shouldn't be complaining about the economic policies of the president.
He should actually be very grateful. Professor Peterson,
yes.
Romney has dismissed the idea that voters see him as rich Mitt, pointing out other wealthy presidents like FDR and JFK. But isn't there a stark difference here between those presidents' policies and Mitt Romney's? I mean, FDR raised taxes to 94% on income over $200,000.
That's right. I mean, listen, both of those presidents, who are great presidents historically, had a certain kind of compassion for the American people and a certain capacity to connect with American people. I mean, you talk about President Kennedy. He comes from a family whose legacy has been about philanthropy and giving and being compassionate and compassionately engaged in connecting with people on a day-to-day basis. Unfortunately, Romney is kind of the opposite of that. The problem with this sort of blind trust release of the financials is obviously it's coordinated. It's politically coordinated so that he divests from those things that might not measure up with his newly found conservative stances. And this is precisely the kind of things that people are so skeptical about with respect to the 1%, is that there's a different set of rules, that you kind of play by these unfair rules, and people can't really stomach that any longer, especially when it comes to economics and finances.
Professor Peterson, it's a blind trust. Mitt Romney would have us believe he knows absolutely nothing about where the investments are made, who's purchased, who's dropped. He knows nothing.
We know that's not true. It's too convenient, too coincidental. Fannie and Freddie Mac are also a part of that list of things that he divested from before this most recent run. And so he made money with the things that were most essential to undermining our economy in the first place. Again, people are not dumb about these things. You can call it a blind trust. You can release the financials late on Friday. But at the end of the day, we understand that it's this kind of sort of maneuvering that's responsible for the challenges that our economy faces right now.
When you think for a moment, Bill, about the way Romney deals with his money, there is a difference between the way he approaches economic policy as compared to someone like FDR. Mitt Romney sets aside $100 million in trust for his kids, but he joins himself to the Ryan budget, which will eviscerate everything from Meals on Wheels to transportation for disabled people. So here's a guy who's very, very wealthy independently. What is his view? That everyone else should do the same as him?
Well, I think he is of the view that, lower taxes and unbalanced budgets and somehow not solving our fiscal problems is somehow going to trickle down to the rest of us, just like it must have done for him during the Reagan era. I mean, he was obviously in the right place at the right time. He didn't create the financial engineering that allowed private equity to thrive in this country. He was a beneficiary of it when he got to, Bain Consulting and then at Bain Capital. He, other people had created that system that he, basically benefited from tremendously by taking other people's money and investing it in all these companies, claiming that he created jobs, when, of course, we all know that he only created the 35 jobs for the people at Bain Capital.
Really? Just 35?
Well,
not
something
100,
like that. Not even close to anything like 100,000. The CEOs of the companies that he invested in, yes, those people created jobs. Not Mitt Romney. He's never created more than, say, 35 jobs. The people that he hired out of Harvard Business School at Bain Capital.
Indeed. Professor Peterson, what did you think of the American Crossroads ad, which is going after the president in this extremely negative way, suggesting that hope has been in some way transformed into fear on fire?
Well, you know that their tactics, Martin, are going to be about fear in some ways. This is how they sort of attempt to other the president and sort of pander to certain areas within their base. I mean, fear-mongering in politics is nothing new, and certainly it's nothing new from the right. It seems to me that it's a little bit early for this, that this is kind of a last-ditch effort that you might see later on in the presidential campaign. But I'm not surprised by it. And my sense is that, or my hope is that we kind of rise above this. I mean, fear-mongering has no place in the political discourse right now.
And yet, Bill, everything that we hear from Romney, his wife, Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan, all of these individuals are creating this climate of fear, almost foreboding, when actually there are some signs that things are getting better.
Look, I mean, you could almost, his joy was palpable on Friday when the market fell 200 points, when the unemployment numbers weren't as robust as people would like. I mean, you know, he's clearly found a way to try to connect. This guy who can't connect with individuals, who can't relate to the common person, is trying to play on this fear of things getting worse and saying we cannot continue the president's policies where, you know, frankly, he hasn't come up with anything that would actually solve any of these problems.
Professor Peterson, is this going to be a problem that as the days pass and it becomes more and more obvious that Mitt Romney wants to celebrate every single dull and unimpressive economic indicator and figure until the election, are people going to think, hang on a second, does this guy want us to do well as a nation or does he want us to fail badly?
Well, the American people are fully aware of the fact that economics is a behavioral science. And so what people say and how they respond to certain things actually shapes and impacts the economy. And so we do need to be optimistic as consumers, and we need our leaders to be optimistic and forward thinking about policy. So I see this as backfiring down the line. Romney cannot be lukewarm about the progress that the economy makes, nor can he be super negative about different sort of challenges that the economy faces, because that's not presidential. That's not actually fulfilling the role that he thinks he wants to have in 2012. So I would argue that for Romney, the best case scenario for him is to be much more measured around the different fluctuations with the economy at this critical time.
Bill, Professor Peterson says that it's not presidential, but it's also un-American to be oppressive and depressed and pessimistic all the time, isn't it? I mean, I'm an outsider. I love this country because you do wake up and think it's possible for us to make things happen.
As we all know, part of the American dream is that anything is possible if you work hard enough. It seems that the Republicans, their whole strategy for the last 2 years has been to, you know, stand in the way of what's right for America. It's incredible to me to see Romney and his Republican colleagues celebrating poor job numbers or celebrating a down day in the Dow and then slipping out his financial information at the 11th hour on Friday night. I mean, this is so cynical. It just drives me up the wall. I don't understand why these people can't get their act together and focus on what we need to do to solve problems in America.
They say they will in November. Bill Cohen, Professor James Peterson, thank you so much.